It began as one of those easygoing dinners that promised laughter, good food, and too much wine. We'd been invited by old friends to celebrate promotion, the kind of evening that felt familiar, safe, ordinary. The restaurant was cozy, the lighting soft, and the air carried the low hum of conversation. Ethan, my husband, sat beside me, calm as ever, quietly taking everything in with a half smile that never gave too much away. I don't even know what made me say it. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the comfort of being surrounded by people who'd known us for years. Someone at the table asked about our first loves, those clumsy, innocent teenage relationships everyone laughs about later. Before I could stop myself, I said, "My ex always knew how to make me laugh, even when I was furious." It came out lighthearted, a passing joke. But the air shifted immediately. The laughter at the table faded, and for a split second, there was only silence. Ethan's eyes lifted to meet mine, not angry, not cold, just still. Everyone looked toward him, waiting for his reaction. I forced a laugh, brushing it off with, "Oh, come on, it's ancient history." But I could already feel something crack inside the quiet. Ethan nodded once, set his glass down, and said softly, "Funny how some memories stay warm, even when the people in them don't." His tone was calm, but every word cut deep. I smiled weakly, trying to lighten the moment, but my voice wavered. He didn't look at me again for the rest of dinner. He spoke when spoken to, laughed when others did, but there was a distance in his eyes, the kind that doesn't make a scene, just quietly retreats. When we got home, he said nothing. He hung up his coat, loosened his tie, and disappeared into his study. I sat on the couch, playing the scene over and over in my mind, realizing too late that sometimes it's not the words themselves, it's what they reveal. The next morning felt strangely still. Ethan was already up, moving around with quiet efficiency. Normally, the smell of coffee and the soft sound of pages turning in the newspaper would feel comforting. That morning, they sounded hollow. I tried to act normal, asked about his day, his meetings, anything. His answers were polite, but clipped, drained of warmth. After a long pause, he finally looked up and said, "Do you ever think about how easy it is to forget what you have while glorify what's gone?" His voice was calm, but the meaning wasn't lost on me. I wanted to tell him it was just a joke, meaningless. But even in my head, the words sounded thin, because deep down I knew he was right. I had spent years carelessly laughing about the past, never realizing how it sounded to the man who was standing beside me. Later that day, I watched him leave for work, his figure disappearing down the driveway. And I understood something I'd never considered before. Trust doesn't always shatter loudly. Sometimes it fractures quietly under the weight of careless words. That evening, I tried to fix it the only way I knew how. I cooked his favorite meal, lit candles, set the table like I used to. When he came home, his eyes scanned the setup, then met mine. "You don't have to perform, Lily," he said gently. "I'd rather have honesty than a dinner cooked out of guilt." The words hit harder than anger ever could. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't cold. He was disappointed. And disappointment from a man like Ethan, who rarely raised his voice, hurt more than any argument. We ate quietly that night. The distance between us wasn't loud, but it was heavy. Days turned into weeks. Ethan never mentioned that dinner again, but something between us had shifted. He was still kind, still attentive, but it felt formal. Every gesture seemed rehearsed, every smile polite. The warmth that once felt effortless was gone, and I couldn't blame him. One careless sentence had made him question something I never meant to challenge: his place in my heart. Weeks later, we were invited out again by the same group of friends. I hesitated, ready to decline, but Ethan surprised me. "It'll be good to go," he said simply. His tone gave nothing away. The evening started off light and easy. For a moment, I thought maybe things were getting better, until one of our friends joked, "Lily, no ex stories this time, all right?" The table erupted in laughter. My face burned. I tried to laugh along, but before I could say a word, Ethan spoke, his voice calm, steady, deliberate. "Don't worry," he said, looking at me. "She doesn't talk about the past anymore. She's living in it." The laughter died instantly. Silence fell. My throat tightened, and I felt every pair of eyes flick between us. There was no bitterness in his tone, no sarcasm, just quiet truth. I whispered, "That's not fair." He nodded once. "You're right," he said softly. "Neither was that joke." The rest of the night passed in uneasy silence. As we left, I realized he hadn't said those words to humiliate me. He had said them to show me what it felt like, to be reduced to a careless sentence, to have your love turned into someone else's entertainment. At home, I broke down. I told him I was sorry, not for the words, but for the thoughtlessness behind them, for the way I had made him feel small without even noticing. He stood there for a long time before reaching out and taking my hand. "I never needed you to be perfect, Lily," he said quietly. "I just needed you to remember who's beside you, not behind you." We sat together in silence that night. But this time, it wasn't the heavy kind. It was calm, fragile, and real, the beginning of healing. That night, I learned something I'll never forget. Love doesn't always die from betrayal or lies. Sometimes it fades through small things, careless laughter, misplaced nostalgia, words spoken without thought. Ethan's quiet honesty that night silenced everyone, but for me, it did something else. It woke me,